Hello and welcome back to another episode in this custom steel all-road bicycle build video series. This is episode 3, and if you haven't had a chance to check out the first 2 episodes, I'll go ahead and put a card up here on your screen. Please check out those videos first, and I think this video will make a lot more sense. So as you know, I am working with John Fitzgerald of Fitz Cycles, located in Santa Rosa, California. And John is the mastermind and frame builder of this bicycle. So in today's video, we're going to be discussing a couple of things. First, what I'd like to do is go through some comments that some of you have left on the previous video, and I will do my best to answer those questions with the information that I have available. And then the second thing I'd like to do is talk about the tubing specifications for this bike build. Now, before we get into this video any further, there's something that is much more pressing and much more important that is on my mind. As some of you know, California is experiencing some pretty severe wildfires this year. There's a fire burning down in Malibu, and there's a fire burning up in the Chico area of Northern California, and it's actually in a town called Paradise. So a couple of things. I recently read this morning that Mitch Pryor of Map Cycles has actually confirmed on his Instagram page that he has lost his entire shop and home to this fire. So if you don't know who Mitch is a up-and-coming, a rising star, I guess if you will, of the custom frame building arena. He's a very young man, but he's very, very talented, and his work is highly regarded in the bicycle industry. Mitch, I had the opportunity to finally see in person for the very first time a custom bike built by Mitch. The owner's name is Bob Cawthorn, and I saw him at the last bike ride, the San Francisco Randonneurs 200K that we participated in a couple weeks ago. I got to see one in person, and I have to tell you, it was the most beautiful bike I've seen in person in a very, very long time. In fact, I don't know if I've seen one in person that was better, better looking than that bike. So yeah, Mitch is a very talented frame builder, and it's very, very unfortunate that his shop is gone. I also know that there are some close friends of mine who have family members who live up there in Paradise who have also lost their homes. And so the whole situation is very, very unfortunate. But there is something we can do, and I can put this out there for all of you. So if any of you are in a position where you can help, I'm going to post a link down below to a GoFundMe page that was set up by Mitch Pryor's close friends in Portland. I don't think they had any idea that it would get out to the public, but it has. And so I'm going to go ahead and post a link to that down below. So if you are in a position to donate, please do. But if you don't feel obligated. I mean, this is not, I'm not trying to make people feel, obligated. Don't feel obligated. But if you do find yourself in a position where you can help and you want to see this young man move through this challenge ahead of him, then that would be terrific. I think he'd really appreciate it. I'm also going to post a link to a general fund that is there to help everyone. And I know there's a lot of people who are friends of mine who are also dealing with great loss. So if you have the ability or the means to donate, please do. I think that'll help everybody. That would mean a lot to everybody. So anyway, yeah. All right. Well, so yeah, I need to take a break for a second, and then I'll come back. Okay. Thanks for your patience. So let's get into some of these comments, and I'll see if I can answer them. Okay, so the first comment comes from MJENK20236. Thanks for your comment. I really appreciate it. And you are asking, what is the tubing wall thickness? I'm glad you asked, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. So I think I'll answer that question as we go through the tubing part of this video. And the next question is from Houston Joust, or Jost? Juiced? I'm sorry for mispronouncing that. Anyway, thank you for the comment, Houston. And Houston is asking why I'm choosing a 90 millimeter long stem. That seems short for a road bike. In fact, we're gonna go into some more of that later in the video also, but just as a point of reference, this bike right here has a 10 centimeter or 100 millimeter long stem, which is what I use on my road bike. And so when we go through this next diagram I'm gonna show you what that looks like on this bike. I've adjusted it to have a 10 millimeter or 100 millimeter stem. So we'll go through that in just a little bit. Thanks for that comment. Okay, Greg Madden, thanks for your comment. Greg asks, how does the geometry compare to your current rando bike? What's your height and inseam, if you don't mind me asking? I'm 6 feet tall with a 34-inch inseam. I'd probably have very similar geometry, but I set my seat to about 76.5 centimeters. Greg, thanks for the comment. And I don't actually own a randoneering bike. All I have is a steel touring bike over there, and it is actually quite a small bike. It's a 56 centimeter seat tube with a 55 centimeter top tube. This bike right behind me here is a road bike. So this is a 57.5 by 57, and it has a 10 centimeter stem and a 175 millimeter crank. And I set the saddle height on this bike at 77 centimeters. I myself have a 34.25 inch inseam, and I'm 6 feet and 1/8 of an inch tall. So you and I have basically share almost identical dimensions. So you'd probably fit well on this bike, and you'd probably find that the touring bike feels very comfortable for long distances, even though it's sort of short and small. But it's comfortable for long distances. This bike you would feel more stretched out, as I do when I ride it. On this new bike that I'm building, which is more of a randoneering bike, it will have similar geometry to this bike here. And that's what we're going to go through today later on in this video after we talk about the tubing. So the next comment is from Bicycle Utopia. Thanks for the comment. And Bicycle Utopia is asking me to consider disc brakes. So I'm going to be doing a whole video on brakes. I feel like that's a topic on its own. I think it would make a good video. So we're going to save that for the next one. But you also mentioned in here, you talked a little bit about the seat clamp, the seat post clamp, the different types that are available, the pros and cons. I'm not sure I can get into that yet. I have to talk with John to find out what his normal design is, and that's a question that I have yet to ask him. So I may have to come back to that again as well. And then as far as braze-ons for racks and mounts and lights and all that stuff, yes. This bike is going to have braze-ons for a rack on the front. It's also going to have internal routing for the front headlight, and the rear tail light will have internal wiring. So for those that don't know, when you have a generator hub mounted on the front hub, you run a wire up through the fork blade up to up through the head tube, and you can attach it to a headlight and a tail light. So it's very nice to have internal wiring. Keeps it clean. It makes sure that it stays out of the way of anything. It won't get bumped or cut or torn off or something like that. So it's a really nice, clean way to install it. And your last comment is, I think you'll regret if I don't extend the head tube up a little bit higher than it was. So you're suggesting 20 more millimeters. I'm glad you brought that up, because in today's video, we're going to be looking a little bit more carefully at the frame geometry. I have a new diagram to show everyone, and I think it'll be really interesting when we go through this. Okay, that's all the comments for now. Thank you all for your comments. I really appreciate them. Please any more questions or comments you can think of, please post those down below and I will try to answer those in the next video. So let's dive in now to the steel tubing selection for this bike build. This is a slightly different diagram than the one I showed you last time. This is just to give you a quick explanation of what this is. So I took John's diagram and I drew my own scale drawing in a design program here. This has all the geometry that John provided in his last diagram. I have used that to generate this model. So let's look at the top tube. The top tube is a 25.4 millimeter diameter tube. It has a 747 butting, so it's 0.7 at the ends and 0.4 at the center. It is a Kaisei brand tubing. Now I am not an expert in tubing, so the brands and stuff don't really mean a lot to me at this point. The thickness does, because I know that the thinner tubing is definitely going to feel more lively, and that's a very thin tube, and it's also a small diameter. So the Downtube is a 28.6 millimeter diameter, 857 true temper. So it's 0.8, 0.5, 0.7. And the seat tube is also 28.6 millimeters in diameter, and it is a Columbus SL, and it has a wall thickness of 0.8, 0.6, 0.8. So the head tube is a standard 28.6 millimeter diameter tube with a 0.9 wall thickness. The seat stays are 14 millimeters in diameter. They are going to be straight stays. There's not going to be any special curves. And those are Columbus Zona single taper. And then as far as the chain stays go, those are 22.2 millimeter, and they are oval, round, single bend with a 0.8 wall thickness. The fork itself is a Columbus Randonneering fork blade. That's what I have now. That's what I know. I don't know what the wall thickness is. I think it was 0.9 if I'm not mistaken, but I could double check. I should probably double check on that, but I think it's a 0.9 or it's a 0.8. But I think John mentioned that there are 3 different thicknesses of fork blades, and this is the middle one, I believe. It's not the thickest, which is for disc brakes. It's not the thinnest, which is for really, really light racing bikes. I think it was the one in the middle, but I would have to double check that. Well, I guess the main reason I drew this was because I wanted to see where the handlebars would be located if I were to set it up more like my road bike. I drew a 10 centimeter stem, and I drew a set of handlebars, and I measured those handlebar dimensions off of all the handlebars that I have. So I took, these are carbon Easton handlebars, and then I have the Nitto Noodle handlebars on that bike, and then I have a Nitto Randonneering handlebar here. And what I did is I measured these bars, all 3 of them, to pick the one that I think I would like to have on this bike eventually. And I picked the 80 millimeter offset for the hoods, and then I used to calculate this, to create this curve in the front bar, I measured the Nitto Noodle as well as this Randonneer bar, and I kind of took the dimension that I thought was most appropriate for this bike. And basically the Nitto Noodle and the Nitto Randonneer bar are almost the same, but they are slightly different. Okay, let's also take a quick look at this headset. So as you will note, I put the 15 millimeter offset of the extension, if you will, of the head tube above the top tube. That's what John and I discussed. That was what I wanted, and so I went ahead and scaled that on here. And then this block of black lines here that I just turned blue for you is the stack of the headset. So this is the top and bottom. There's the cup and bearing, and then there's the nuts, and then there's the washers, as well as the brake hangers and or a decalure of some sort. So I measured to get that dimension, which is 35 millimeters. I measured that off of my touring bike, and that's exactly what it is on my touring bike. It's 35 millimeters. So basically with that, you end up with 50 millimeters of total dimension from the top of the top tube to the top of the headset. And what that meant was I needed to figure out what I wanted for a handlebar drop. How much drop do I want from the top of my saddle to the top of my handlebars? And I arbitrarily chose 50 millimeters. And why I came up with that was because if you look at this bike, I first took this bike, I got a Spirit level. This is a 4-foot Spirit level, and I set it on the saddle, and I measured from the bottom of the level to the top of the handlebar. The drop from the seat to the top of the bars on this bike is actually 75 millimeters. So much more than what we're showing here on the diagram. So I chose 50 millimeters just because that's an easy number, and I wanted to get an idea of how much of the stem would be protruding above the top of the headset at a comfortable 50 millimeter drop. I could drop this to 70 millimeters and still be more comfortable than this road bike, because recall the road bike has a 57 centimeter top tube. This has a 56 centimeter top tube, so it's a centimeter short. The distance between the actual top of the handlebar, which is right there, to the nose of the saddle is 51.9 millimeters. What's interesting, and that's with a 10 millimeter stem, what's interesting is if you measure this one from the nose of the saddle, it is 53 and a half centimeters. So we're already, even though we're using the same exact stem on both bikes, the Fitz bike here has about 2 centimeters shorter reach. So with the 2 centimeters shorter reach and a little bit less drop, this bike will be a lot more comfortable to ride. And I still have room to move this stem up. Or I could lower it down and make it even more aggressive if I so choose to do. But I don't want to have to do that. And I don't want to have it all the way up either if I don't want to. So what I've got left over is, as you can see right here, what's left over then at this very comfortable neutral position, if you will allow me to call it that, is 42 millimeters of stem protruding above the top of the headset. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this revised diagram. This is probably how I'm going to end up setting it up. I think this is very, very close to where I'm going to have it set up. And remember, this is the saddle here is set to 77 centimeters from the center of the bottom bracket to the top of the saddle. And that's exactly where this bike is at too. So anyway, that is the tubing. And that is what I know now. So if there are any more questions or comments, please feel free to leave those in the comments below. And if you are in a position where you can offer some help for these recent fire victims, follow the link in the description below. And I think that would, I think they would really appreciate it. Yeah, otherwise, you guys all have a great evening, and I will see you in the next video.